Welcome to World Wars Unfolded, Key Battles and Global Impact. Don't forget to subscribe for more historical insights. Am I the only one that didn't know how the promise of the 20th century turned into a century of conflict? The 20th century dawned with a promise of progress. Technology advanced rapidly, promising to connect the world, yet this century of promise would descend into darkness. Twice, the world plunged into global conflict. Millions of soldiers mobilized. New technologies brought unimaginable destruction. Civilians were caught in the crossfire. The world wars were a clash of ideologies and ambitions. They showed both great courage and terrible violence. The scars of these conflicts continue to shape the world today. The United Nations was formed to prevent future wars. The world sought to rebuild and learn from the past. If you found this insightful, please subscribe and invite others to join our channel. The Battle of the Marne, fought in September 1914, was a pivotal moment in the early days of World War I. German forces, following their Schlieffen Plan, had advanced rapidly through Belgium and into France. Paris, the French capital, seemed poised to fall. The French army, though battered, was not broken. With British forces alongside them, they launched a desperate counterattack. The fighting was fierce. Both sides threw everything they had into the battle. German soldiers, many of whom believed they would be home by Christmas, found themselves bogged down in a bloody stalemate. French and British troops fighting for their homeland held their ground with tenacity. After days of brutal fighting, the German advance was halted. The Schlieffen Plan, which relied on a swift victory in the west, was in tatters. The war, which many had believed would be over in a matter of months, would drag on for 4 long years. The Gallipoli campaign, fought in 1915, was a costly failure for the Allied powers. The goal was to capture the Dardanelles Strait, a crucial waterway that controlled access to the Black Sea. Allied forces, led by British and French troops, landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula, hoping to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war. The Ottomans, however, were well prepared for the Allied assault. Under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal, they mounted a fierce defense. The terrain was unforgiving, and the Ottomans fought with tenacity. The Gallipoli Peninsula became a bloodbath. The Allied forces, hampered by poor planning and logistical problems, were unable to make significant headway. In December 1915, after months of stalemate and heavy losses, the Allied forces evacuated the peninsula. The campaign was a military disaster for the Allies. Verdun. From February to December 1916, the armies of France and Germany clashed in a battle of attrition that would become a symbol of the First World War's brutality. German General Erich von Falkenhayn, believing that France could be bled white, launched a massive offensive on the fortress city of Verdun. Verdun held immense symbolic importance for the French. The French army, determined to hold the line, poured men and resources into the defense of the city. The battle raged for months, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Artillery fire rained down on the battlefield, transforming the once picturesque landscape into a muddy, cratered wasteland. Soldiers fought and died in the trenches, often for mere yards of ground. By the time the battle ended in December 1916, over 700,000 men had become casualties. The French, though suffering immense losses, had held Verdun. Verdun became a symbol of French resilience and the human cost of war. The Battle of the Somme, which began on July 1, 1916, was intended to be a decisive breakthrough for the British and French armies on the Western Front. After months of bloody stalemate at Verdun, the Allies hoped to relieve pressure on the French and achieve a decisive victory over the Germans. The Somme, however, would become synonymous with the horrors of trench warfare and the staggering losses suffered during the First World War. The battle began with a massive British artillery bombardment intended to obliterate the German defences. However, the bombardment proved largely ineffective. When the British infantry went over the top, they were met with a hail of machine gun fire. The first day of the Somme was the bloodiest day in British military history. Despite the horrific losses, the British Army continued to attack throughout the summer and fall of 1916. The Battle of the Somme finally ended in November 1916, with the Allies having gained only a few miles of ground. The battle had achieved little in terms of strategic objectives and had come at a horrific human cost. The Battle of Midway, fought in June 1942, was a pivotal naval battle in the Pacific theater of World War II. It marked a turning point in the war against Japan, shattering their aura of invincibility and putting them on the defensive. The battle was a clash of aircraft carriers, a testament to the growing importance of naval aviation in modern warfare. The Japanese, emboldened by their early successes in the Pacific, sought to capture Midway Island, a strategically important atoll in the Central Pacific. However, the Americans had broken the Japanese naval codes and were aware of their plans. American dive bombers launched from the carriers USS Enterprise, USS Yorktown and USS Hornet caught the Japanese carriers, refueling and rearming, inflicting devastating damage. The Battle of Midway was a disaster for the Japanese. The American victory at Midway was a major turning point in the Pacific War. Section 7, Stalingrad, a turning point in the East. The Battle of Stalingrad, fought from August 1942 to February 1943, was one of the most brutal and decisive battles of World War II. It marked a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front, halting the German advance into the Soviet Union. The battle was a clash of ideologies, a struggle between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. German forces under General Friedrich Paulus reached the outskirts of Stalingrad in the summer of 1942. The city, on the Volga River, was a major industrial center. Hitler was determined to capture it for its strategic value and as a propaganda victory. The Soviets, under Joseph Stalin, were equally determined to defend the city. The Battle of Stalingrad became a brutal fight for survival. Fierce street fighting turned the city into a wasteland of rubble. The Soviet army launched a counteroffensive in November 1942. They surrounded the German Sixth Army, trapping them in the city. Section 8, D-Day, a beachhead for freedom, June 6, 1944, D-Day. The largest amphibious invasion in history. Operation Overlord, the long-awaited Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France, had begun. Over 150,000 Allied troops from the United States, Britain, Canada and other nations landed on the beaches of Normandy, France. Their mission to liberate Western Europe from Nazi tyranny. The invasion was the culmination of years of planning and preparation. Thousands of ships, aircraft and men were involved in the operation. The stakes were incredibly high. If the invasion failed, the war in Europe could drag on for years. The soldiers who landed on those beaches knew they were part of something momentous. The landings were met with fierce resistance from the German defenders. Despite heavy losses, the Americans, along with their British and Canadian counterparts, fought their way ashore. D-Day was a turning point in World War II. Section 9, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atomic bombs, August 1945. The world watched in horror as the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These unprecedented acts of destruction ushered in the atomic age, a new era defined by the terrifying power to unleash unimaginable destruction. The decision to use atomic bombs remains one of the most controversial in human history. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the culmination of the Manhattan Project, a top-secret American effort to develop atomic weapons. The bombs, with their devastating power, were seen by some as a necessary evil, a way to end the war quickly and prevent further bloodshed. Others argued that their use was morally reprehensible, an act of terror that indiscriminately killed tens of thousands of civilians. The impact of the bombs was immediate and horrific. The blasts obliterated everything within a vast radius, leaving behind only shadows etched into the ground. Section 10, Shaping the Modern World. The World Wars reshaped the world. They left an indelible mark on the 20th century. The wars led to the deaths of millions, redrew borders, and sparked innovation. They also left a legacy of trauma and loss. The world grappled with preventing future conflicts. The United Nations was formed in 1945 to maintain peace and security. The Holocaust led to a renewed emphasis on human rights. The wars accelerated the decline of European colonialism. Weakened by war, European powers lost their empires. New nations emerged, and the world map was redrawn. The wars shifted the global balance of power. Wartime advancements profoundly impacted civilian life. Please subscribe, like and comment so you can get the next episodes. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episodes.